Every optical illusion in 8 minutes.
Motion after effect. Stare at the center of this moving image. When I'll tell you to look away, you'll see everything around you zooming and moving, making a kind of breathing movement. This happens because your eyes try to adapt to this type of movement, and when you look at something stationary, they take a while to readapt. Now take a look around you. Do you see it? Ames room. Take a look at this man walking inside an Ames room. When he goes to the left side, it seems as if he's small, but when he goes to the right side, it seems as if he's a giant. It might surprise you if I tell you that the two sides of the room have the same height. Let's take a top-down look at the design of this room. The fact that the right side is much closer to the camera makes it seem like the person is bigger. Flashed face distortion effect. When you stare at the center of this cross, the faces on the sides start to appear deformed and grotesque. This phenomenon was discovered by chance, and there's not yet enough research to understand why this happens. Stepping feet illusion. These two buses seem like they're moving step by step, but take a look at what happens when I remove the background black and white strips. This effect is mostly caused by the contrast between the buses and the background stripes. Silencing effect. If you look at the center of this image, you can see the small balls changing color, but watch what happens when the balls start rotating. The balls seem to keep the same color, but if you focus on them, they are actually changing it just like when they were stationary. This happens because it's harder to notice changes on moving objects. After image. Stare at this image. When I'll show you a white screen, you'll see a negative after image, which in this case will be cyan on magenta. This happens because the chemical activity in your eye's retina continues even when the eyes are no longer experiencing the original stimulus. Can you see it now? If not, try to blink really fast. Color dove illusion. Stare at the 4 dots in the center of this image. This illusion uses the same mechanism as the after image illusion, but it uses it to create existing things, faces, etc. You should be seeing a picture of Jesus right now. Impossible object. An impossible object is a two-dimensional figure, which is instantly and naturally understood as representing a projection of a three-dimensional object, but cannot exist as a solid object. The animation you're seeing is called the Penrose stairs. Other variations of it are the Penrose triangle, the impossible cube, and the blivet. Hybrid image. In this image, you'll see Albert Einstein if you look from a short distance, and Marilyn Monroe if you look from afar. This happens because the image combines the low spatial frequencies of one picture with the high spatial frequencies of another one. When viewed from a far enough distance, the fine details blur and merge with the face of Monroe. Ponzo illusion. The upper line looks longer because we interpret the upper part as receding into the distance. This is caused by the same mechanism that makes us perceive 2D images as 3D ones. Poggendorf illusion. In this image, it seems as if the blue line is the continuation of the black one, while it is actually the red one. This is caused by the properties of the obscuring pattern and the nature of its borders. Forced perspective. It's a technique that makes an object appear farther away, closer, larger, or smaller than it really is. Tourists that take a photo of the Tower of Pisa in the famous pose are actually applying this technique. Barber pole illusion. Did you know that the diagonal lines in a barber pole actually rotate horizontally and don't go up or down? The vertical movement is just an optical illusion. Zollner illusion. These lines are not perfectly parallel, right? Look at what happens when I remove the shorter lines. The angle of the shorter lines creates the impression that one end of the longer lines is nearer to the viewer than the other end. Cafe wall illusion. These lines are actually parallel and straight, but they appear sloped because white areas have an apparent greater size than black ones. This effect disappears when the colors are changed. Wundt illusion. Are the two red lines straight or bowed inwards? They are actually straight, but they appear distorted because of the lines in the background. There are two other variations of this, like the Herring illusion and the Orbison illusion. Fraser spiral. This is also known as a false spiral, as the overlapping black arcs are actually just a series of concentric circles, not a spiral. Vertical horizontal illusion. Which one of these two lines is the longest one? Neither of them. They're both the same length. If you guessed that the vertical one was longer, you've been tricked. Crater illusion. This illusion causes craters or other holes to appear as mountains or domes. One of the most accepted theories is that it's caused by our being accustomed to seeing light from overhead. Canisa triangle. This image gives the impression of a bright white triangle, despite the absence of lines or color change across the edge. Some people perceive the illusory triangle as brighter than the background and closer to the viewer. Kinetic depth effect. This spinning dancer can be seen to be spinning in both directions. This happens because there's a lack of visual cues for depth. For example, the dancer's arms can be perceived to be moving in the foreground, between her and you, or in the background, behind the dancer's body. Now take a look at what happens when I give you more visual cues. You can now determine what direction she's spinning in. Rotating snakes. These circles are stationary, but they appear to be moving. Contrast and small involuntary eye movements seem to play a huge role in this illusion. Turnus illusion. In this GIF, it seems like only one circle is moving, but if we add a small blank frame, it seems like they are both moving. This is closely linked to Gestalt psychology, and it's a type of apparent group motion. Beta movement. Here's another example of apparent motion, which was used in the famous snake game. This makes you perceive a movement instead of some random circles appearing and disappearing, which is what is actually happening. Phi phenomenon. In contrast to the beta movement, this one does not include any movement of the circle, just the disappearing of them, but it still creates a movement perception. Lilac chaser. This illusion has 3 steps. When you start staring at the cross, you'll first see a gap running around the circle, which is actually there. After a while, you'll start seeing a green disc running around the circle of lilac discs in place of the gap. The last step happens when you stop seeing the lilac discs and you just see a green disc running around on the gray background. Gravity hill. It's a place where the layout of the surrounding land makes a slight downhill slope seem like an uphill slope, like in this image where the water seems to run uphill. Ebbinghaus illusion. The 2 orange circles are exactly the same size, but the difference in surrounding circles makes it seem like the right one is larger. Stroboscopic effect. If I show you this GIF, you perceive the clock hand as moving from right to left, but take a look at what happens if I start to cover it for small periods of time. This effect is closely linked to the wagon wheel effect, which makes you see propellers of helicopters or airplanes as stationary, moving slowly or moving backwards. Bézold effect. In this image, the red lines on the white background are lighter and the ones on the black background are darker, or so it seems. The horizontal red lines have the exact same color, but the backgrounds create this illusion. Ehrenstein illusion. The sides of a square placed inside concentric shapes take a fake curved shape, like a shuriken. Sander illusion. The diagonal line in the left parallelogram seems longer than the one in the smaller right parallelogram, but they are the same length. This might happen because the diagonal lines around the blue ones give an illusion of depth, which creates an illusion in the length of the blue lines. Mueller-Lyer effect. This is pretty famous, but also pretty effective. The 2 lines are actually the same length. Hermann grid illusion. Ghost-like gray blobs seem to appear in the white intersections, but only if you don't directly look at them. Rubens vase. Is this a vase, or are they 2 faces looking at each other? This is an example of ambiguous 2-dimensional forms, and it's a perfect demonstration of the figure-ground distinction the brain makes. Since the figure and the ground are not distinguishable in this image, they are interchangeable. Contrast illusion. The contrast illusion happens when there's a distortion in perception of a stimulus when said stimulus is presented after or simultaneously with another one of lesser or greater value. This happens with visual stimuli as well. Right now you might see the red dots on the right side as darker than the ones on the left side, but both of them have exactly the same color. A famous example of this effect is the checker shadow illusion, where the area labeled A appears to be darker than the area labeled B, while they actually have the same color. Mach bands. Your eyes exaggerate the contrast between edges of these slightly different shades of gray when they touch each other because it triggers the edge detection system. Leaning tower illusion. Can you believe that the tower in the right photo does not lean more to the right? It's an exact duplicate of the photo on the left. Hollow face illusion. The perception of a concave mask of a face appears as a normal convex face. This could be a demonstration for the power of top-down knowledge for vision. Color constancy. How can you still know what colors the things are in this photo while it is composed of only light and dark shades of red and white? It's thanks to color constancy, a feature of the human color perception system. Shout out to these guys who support my channel through Patreon. You can end up on this list as well. Check out the link in the description.